Hello everyone, and welcome to my brand new channel, Stems and Pages. Thank you for joining me today as I set up my 2022 reading journal. Yes, I know we are halfway through the year, but what better way to start a reading journal than 6 months into your reading journey? While this isn't my first reading journal or my first time journaling, I did realize at the end of last year that doing the standard bullet journal really wasn't something that I was keeping up with, and it started to turn into more of a chore than something I enjoyed doing. But having a reading journal was something that I did enjoy, just keeping track of the books I've read, my reviews, and all of the challenges that I set up throughout the year. So I thought that would be something I continue. And instead of keeping everything on my old bullet journal channel, I thought I'd just start anew and focus on what I love doing most, which is reading. While I haven't yet decided what I'll be doing on this channel, I figured that I'd just start with my reading journal and go from there. But a few of the ideas I have are obviously talking about books, reviewing books, maybe doing a few rants and raves about some of my favorite books and those that I just didn't enjoy very much. We all know that Book Talk and Bookstagram exist, so obviously go and check out my TikTok and Instagram accounts for more content. But yeah, I guess BookTube is just another avenue for me to explore and see how it goes, and I hope you stick around with me on this new journey. As you can tell from the first few pages, I'm doing a collage style setup, which is pretty common from what I've seen from other reading journals that people have been doing. It just makes sense, it looks good, it fits with the vibe of reading and journaling, and it's actually quite easy. There's like no regiment that you need to stick to. You can really just do what you want. It's, I feel, just a lot more free-flowing than kind of the standard bullet journal, and I have a ton of craft paper and washi tape that I really need to use from my bullet journaling days, so what better way than to use as much of it as possible in my reading journal. So this is my first real spread for 2022, and that is just my overall reading tracker that tracks how many books that I've read this year, and my goal for this year is 120 books. I do track this on Goodreads as well, and you can follow me or send me a friend request on Goodreads, linked below, if you want to see what books I'm reading. But this is just a standard fill in the box for each time I read a book. And if you didn't notice, I already messed up on the title of this page, so I did have to go back and change it to Books Read in 2022. So good way to start off the journal, in my opinion. But who here hasn't messed up at least once or twice in their bullet or reading journals? And now that we have the proper title of the page, I can just go in and meticulously make all these individual boxes. But of course, I'm not a monster, so I won't force you to sit here and watch me make 120 little boxes. Now, moving on is my next spread, which is the original title that I used on my last one, 22 books to read in 2022. I did this last year with 2021, and I tried to vary the genres that I read last year, and it resulted in me actually not reading a lot of the books, mostly because I just wasn't 100% interested in them. I just thought I'd add them to my list either because they were bestsellers or they were trending or I thought I should read them. But this year I went in a different direction, and almost all of the books that I chose to read this year are in the fantasy genre, which is my preferred and favorite genre, and I didn't really want to set myself up for failure from the beginning, so I made sure that I chose books that I either wanted to read already and just haven't gotten to, or that were being released this year and were already a part of a series that I was invested in, so that way I could accomplish my goal of reading all of these books. But as you can see, I just printed out the covers of each book just on a standard printer, making it a collage and printing it out and cutting them out and then gluing them on the page. And you can already tell that some of the books I've chosen have already been out for a year or two, and some of them are books that are coming out this year by some popular authors and a part of some popular series. So I'm pretty excited for the books that I had chosen for 2022. And speaking of favorite genres, obviously there are a lot of subgenres in the fantasy world, but some of my favorite subgenres in fantasy are dark fantasy, high fantasy, and epic fantasy, as well as some young adult and paranormal. And then in the last year or so, I have started to go down the fantasy romance rabbit hole, which I am not sorry for, so you see a couple of those on this list as well. Here is a spread that I know is already going to be very difficult for me, and this is my book bracket spread, which pretty much pits my favorite books each month against each other to have the ultimate favorite book of 2022, and I'm already dreading the decisions that I'm going to have to make each month on what my favorite book is. In order to read 120 books a year, I'm sure you can do the math, is I'm going to have to read a lot of books every month to accomplish that goal. And the odds that there is going to be just one single standalone book every month is going to be rare. I can already tell right now. So yeah, this spread I'm not looking forward to, but completing it is definitely a good way to reflect on the books that you read throughout the year. And over time, I've noticed that sometimes a book that I think will be my favorite actually isn't, and something else comes in and knocks it out of the top spot. So it'll be very interesting to see who takes the top spot for 2022. I should also note that the journal I'm using is an Archer and Olive B5 notebook. This particular one that I'm using is no longer available on the store, but Archer and Olive has a ton of B5 notebooks in all sorts of colors and designs, but I will link the website below for any who are interested. And then of course the stamps that I'm using will also be linked, and then I'm just using standard fine liners. You don't have to use the fine liners, you can just use any black pen, but all of the materials I'm using I've just collected throughout the year, so unfortunately I can't link those, but if you go to any craft store or even online, you can find all sorts of craft paper like this, various stickers in themes like floral or coffee shops, stuff like that. So while I won't be linking any of the scrap materials that I use, I will link the prominent materials like my stamps and my notebook down in the description. This next spread is my book bingo spread. I did this last year and I found it to be a lot of fun. I usually fill the tiles in with things that I either use as a way to challenge me to read different books, or that I think would be a fun thing to explore, but some of the squares that I fill in are pretty easy and simple to do, like read a book with a red cover, or read a book with a queer main character, or even read a book that's been adapted into a TV or movie. So this spread can be something that's fun, or it can be something that challenges you to read books that you normally wouldn't read. And this spread here is just a page for me to track the book releases of 2022. That way I know when they'll be released and when I can expect to fill my Amazon cart or my Kindle with new books. I'm sure there are going to be many books that come out this year that won't fit on this page, but for the ones that I'm highly anticipating, I will keep track of those release dates in this spread. Next spread is mostly to help me keep track of the number of books I read each month. Each square is a month of the year, and I keep track of the number of books I read and also what my favorite book of that month was. Well, this does help me with my book bracket. Usually by the time that I get to the bracket, some things have changed. I either think I like a book more, and I will admit that sometimes I let reviews and other Bookstagram opinions influence me, which I know I probably shouldn't, but it does happen. But yeah, so this is just a really easy spread that I only have to fill in once a month, and it kind of lets me see what months I read quite a bit of books and which months I'm a bit slower. Usually when I have a lot going on, I actually am unable to read as much as I would like, unless there's a nice vacation thrown in there where all I do is read. But yeah, it's interesting to see. Last year during the winter months I read a lot more books just because there wasn't a whole lot to do, and then during the summer is when my reading usually takes a bit of a dip, but usually on average I can read at least 10 books a month, and hopefully I can keep that same average this year. I know that reading 10 books a month seems like a lot. A lot of the people I follow in the book talk and bookstagram worlds usually read about the same amount, but I have friends and other people who ask me how do I read so many books, and I do have quite a few ways. One, I don't have that active of a social life, so I do have a lot of free time to read. I also don't have children, so when I'm done with work, I don't really have to do anything that involves taking care of another human being other than my husband, but he's pretty self-sufficient when he needs to be, so I do have a lot of free time to read. I also am a very fast reader. I can read a 200 to 300 page book depending on how much time I do have within a day if I'm really into it. I also do read a lot of audiobooks, and when I do listen to those audiobooks, I do listen to them at twice the speed, so it does go by pretty quickly. And when I'm listening to them, I listen to them while I'm doing chores, or while I'm doing menial work, or while I'm walking the dog, or running errands in the car. So whenever I'm doing anything at all, I always have a book with me, either an audiobook or a digital book or a hard copy book, because you just never know when you're going to be in line at the DMV or stuck in traffic, or just, you never know. You just never know when you're going to be somewhere where you wish you had a book. So I always make sure I have some form of a book on me so that I can either listen to one or read one. And yeah, that just resulted in me reading a lot of books, and the size of the books also varies. While I do read a lot of large books in the 400 to 600 page realm, I also fill in a lot of gaps in between those books with novellas and shorter books, so that also helps me up the count of books that I read each month. So if you are looking to read more books this year, I would recommend some of those tips that I just shared with you. These two spreads are both tracker spreads. On the left, we just have a tracker to keep track of the series that I read, because fantasy is my #1 genre, as some of you know who also read that genre. A lot of the books are a part of a series, so this is just a way for me to keep track of them. And then on the right are another tracker, mostly a challenge to broaden my horizons in my reading outside of fantasy. I want to get into sci-fi this year, so I have a tracker to keep track of the sci-fi books I read, as well as the finales. A lot of series that I'm reading are finishing up this year, so I want to keep track of that. And I also want to read some more nonfiction and some debut authors, as well as BIPOC authors, books with queer main characters, and I want to target my TBR and start decreasing that list as much as possible. I don't know if I will accomplish that, because I seem to be adding to it more than I'm taking away from it, but that is a goal that I want to do in 2022. This is my final spread for this setup, and it is my book club spread. I am a part of a book club here in my hometown with a couple of my friends that we started about 3 years ago. So I created this spread to keep track of those books. We always have a theme each month when we read a book, so I just want to showcase the books that we pick throughout the year, show the ratings, and have one spread that I can see a comprehensive look at the books that my book club reads in 2022. Before we move into the final flip through of my 2022 bullet journal setup, just want to remind you all to subscribe to my channel. It's brand new, so any of you subscribers will be one of the first. And if you do like this setup and want to see more videos, be sure to hit that like button. But yeah, thank you for joining me on my first video on my new channel. Here is my 2022 reading journal setup. Thank you all for joining me today. I look forward to sharing more of my books and recommendations and just my thoughts with you as we continue to grow this channel. As I said before, if you like what you saw today, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you can be reminded of my upcoming videos. Till next time.